Okay, guys, welcome to our evening Zoom call. I feel like it's been such a long time. I didn't even know what to say there for a second because of all the travel. But yeah, thanks to all the coaches that have covered while I've been away. If you are new, I see a bunch of new faces. We hop on for 30 minutes. We cover a few topics. And typically we exchange around the coaches to all bring a topic to the table. But I've had so many conversations and things that have come up that I wanted to kind of kick it off and then allow the coaches an opportunity to weigh in where they feel like they can add from their experience. So we're just going to get started. Obviously, if you can't stay on for the whole time, we record it, we timestamp it, but at 30 minutes, we shut it down. So to start, we've had many athletes cramping at races, and we should not be cramping at races because we know the answer to why we cramp at races. And so I kind of want to stop that now. I can't tell you how many people I saw at Waco and everywhere else. I'm like, have you done a sweat test yet? And the answer was no. And I'm like, why would we spend all this time training, all the money to get to this race and not spend what's $100 and the time, which is like one workout, very easy, patch on, write the on the card, way before, way after, to understand how much sodium you're losing in your sweat. And then outside of that, something that you should all have is a chart of you weighing before, doing a workout, weighing after, and understanding how much you are losing in different temperatures. There should be a temperature and a humidity chart next to it. And you should have an exact amount you lose and then in turn need to replace for all the different conditions, and then you know what to do. And then the good news about the sweat test is based on how much you lose, your sodium rate goes up and down. And what we found out in Kona, if you are heat adapted, then the concentration of your sodium is less. And so we're going to cover some of that stuff. I actually emailed Livingston from Levelen, and I said, give me the top 10 things all our athletes need to know about sodium replacement. And a lot of us are actually replacing sodium, but doing it wrong. And so I'm going to pull up his emails because some of us are visual and sometimes just need to read it. And then it's on the screen and you have it for future. So let me get on here and share what he wrote. And I'll just read through it real quick. Okay. Do you guys see? Okay. So big things. Everyone sweats differently. We all need to do a test to determine what we're sweating. And we also sweat differently on the bike to the run. So both are needed. What I have found, however, is a lot of us sweat more on the run than we do on the bike. And so, but the amount we sweat per liter is actually very similar. And so if you can actually take that amount per sweat per liter, and then you can extrapolate it to the bike and run. But if you just want to make sure, just do both. And then you know your numbers to replace. Your sweat electrolyte concentrations will change based on your diet. We've seen extreme changes based on diet and body composition. And so when you do one test, if you have big changes in either of those two things, you need to test again. And so I think it's fair to say that at least once or twice a year, we just need to get that done. Again, it's so important because it can ruin our race completely. Carbohydrates, this is something key and something we probably haven't honed in enough, is that you cannot take electrolytes without carbohydrates. It doesn't absorb as best. And so often we're out there and we're taking base salts with water, but ideally we should be, if we're going to take some base salts to add it to the electrolyte content, we need to drink it with Gatorade, with carbohydrates to that for it to absorb better. The average, and this is key, if you have not done this before, the average we are seeing is 2000 milligrams per hour. And so I think most people that have not tested and we ask them how much they're taking, it is way below that. And then this now solves the problem of this is why they're cramping. However, we have seen most of our guys that are heavy sweaters be much higher than this. We tested our guys in Kona and all of them were 3,000 to 3,500. And a lot of that was because they were not fully ready for that heat. And that's where the sodium content went up. And so we were like, well, let's stick to the plan, but let's have extra sodium just in case we start to feel it. And sure enough, all of them did get to the point of cramping out there. So in hindsight, we should have just gone for it based on the tests. And now this is a big one. We've had athletes at every single race have some sort of hypernatremia, something that it is very dangerous and we want to completely avoid. And that was just because they drank too much water and they did not have enough sodium. And then it was hard to recover from. So you should lose weight during exercise. That is common. You just don't want to lose obviously a ton, but some weight loss is normal. And then you should never gain weight. So if you actually had to do a workout, weigh yourself and then gain weight after the fact, then you're drinking too much and that water is just extracellular, as you see here, where's the word here? Outside of the cells, and it's causing you to bloat. And then the final thing, which I thought was really interesting, I didn't even know it. Muscle is comprised of mostly water. So in general, men have more water composition than women. And because of this, smaller changes in fluid intake have a more pronounced effect in women. And this is true also women's time of the month, kind of how we replace our sodium and how much more we have to drink is also affected. And so that is a conversation to have with your coaches. And then, yeah, just frequently getting adequate fluid and electrolytes during a race is difficult. I always get the question, do I front load? And so here was the confirmation of, yes, you do. And his recommendation was starting 36 hours prior to the race start. I know for sure I start about that, to be honest, now that I do the math. And then the morning of, for sure, something I never did before was throughout the morning of the race, I'd be sipping on water with quite a heavy dose of electrolyte to get my day started. I will send out all these links to you guys after the fact. So any coaches want to weigh in on that and any questions, you type them in the chat and we will get to them.
One thing I'll say, and this isn't directly related to racing, but as we're heading into colder months, especially if you're indoors or you're outdoors, you're not going to be sweating as much. And so you may think, oh, I don't need to drink as much, or I don't need to be replacing as much, but you absolutely do still need to be replacing those electrolytes that you're losing, drinking enough. Because I think whenever we're colder, we just don't think about it. So definitely keep that in mind as we're going into the colder months of training.
Perfect. Yes. Anyone else? Katie, anything to add? I think that's it. I'm trying to see which other coaches are on here today. Alice is on here. And I think that is all the faces. If I'm missing someone, please shout at me. Okay. So we're opening up for discussion again. We have a question before we move on. Does he have thoughts on the amount of preloading two times the Levelen amount? Yes. My understanding is like what you lost per hour was what you would be taking in the morning of the race. To up to 2 times the amount is the discussion I had with him. So I know for me, when I was, my sweat rate, sodium loss was 1500 milligrams. And I would have about that first thing in the morning. And then I'd be sipping as I go through my transition and walking to the start, I'd be sipping on more. I don't think I did double, but I at least did the amount of the hour. I'd have to ask. What's the best electrolyte? Is BPM great? And what is the other one? There are so many options out there. I think you got to figure out what works best for you. The interesting with one is BPN does not have carbs with it. And so you should be taking it with a carb source. And a lot of us do. We add electrolytes to G1M to up the electrolytes in the carbohydrate drink that we're taking, or we're taking electrolytes and we're supplementing with something else. And so that works, but it is, based on the fact that he's saying it's better absorption with carbohydrates, finding an electrolyte with carbohydrates, and then finding what works for you. Some people really respond to certain one. It's easier to take versus another. I've never been a big fan of salt tabs personally, but it's so hard to take down, especially when you're working hard. And then by the time it's now goes into your stomach and then slowly go, the tablet has to absorb and go to your bloodstream. It's like, it's too late. Let's get something in right away. And when I was in trouble with cramping, I didn't know about base salts at the time. And I would stick a salt tab in my cheek and I would bite it. And my cheek would hurt for 2 days after, but I would get the salt through my cheek, and that would allow me to get the salt quicker to my bloodstream and take away the cramps sooner. So I think like a base salt or one of those that's quickly absorbed is the way to go, but try different things. I like BPN, of course, because it tastes good and for many other reasons. So this one, no one knows we're talking about it, but we're talking about it. Who has heard, show of hands, the Christian and Gustav interview on Rich Roll? Okay, I see many shows of hands. And so I thought it would be really interesting if we went around for those that do want to weigh in on what their main takeaways were. And I found it interesting. I was listening from the athlete side, but I was also listening from the coach side. And it was very fascinating to me, some of the things that they were exposing that their coach was doing. And for an example that maybe slipped on some of the athletes' kind of radars, because there were so many other takeaways from this, was how their coach would pre-plan their whole training block for 6 months out, but then they would adjust based on kind of what they're seeing or how the athlete is adapting to the training. So again, that is what we do as well. We very much pre-plan the road and the path to the Ironman, and we have a system, as do they. But as coaches, we're also looking at how the athlete is handling the load of training. Where do things need to be adjusted for that specific athlete? And yes, if we hit certain goals in what we're trying to achieve in that little block, we are going to move on sooner. So did anyone have that as a takeaway that I was like, found very interesting? Yeah, I see some nods. Ashton, I'm going to get someone else. Give me one takeaway that you want to speak to.
The biggest takeaway that I had, and this is different than what you and I had talked about, because I kind of thought about it after the fact, was they have a good understanding of what the purpose is of the session whenever they're going into it. And I know I'm super guilty of this, and I think we all can just kind of get into the day-to-day motion. Okay, I'm going to do this, but I don't think we think about what the intention is or the purpose is of that session. And so that's something that I know I'm going to be really attentive of, and especially with my athletes, make sure that they understand what the purpose of the session is, because I think that just heightens whatever you're going to get out of it in the long run.
Yeah, I 100% agree. They talked about, we want to go in and win the workout. And what winning the workout meant was hitting the workout targets very specifically and intentionally. And it's true. I was someone that just kind of did what I was told until I became a coach. And then I started understanding why I was doing it. And then I took way more intention and specific preparation into each session. So guys, these little things are actually the key to why they're so good. And this one was a big one. They never tried to beat the session. I'm looking at some faces, never try to beat the session and never try to do more than when the coach is giving them. They're just trying to execute perfectly on what the coach is giving. And for sure, an understanding of that will allow you to do so more so. Okay, Katie, did you hear the podcast or not yet?
No, it's been kind of an off week for me, but it's on to listen to for like literally tomorrow. So yes, I plan on it for sure. So it's kind of like I want to go la 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 la.
No, this is good.
I'm excited.
Alice, did you listen to it?
I'm about halfway through it.
Okay. What you got?
Yeah, I would say one of the things I found really interesting was Gustav was talking about his glucose monitor. And he was saying that the times that he was getting sick were the days after where he hit like really low hypoglycemic episodes overnight. So not so much using it, I forget what is the company, but not so much using it for during in-session training and watching his glucose, but kind of making sure that he is eating well between sessions and fueling well. And he even said like on his off days, not eating way less because his body is recovering. Yeah, super sapiens. Thank you, Todd. And just making sure he's fueling well. So even if you're not training as much, your body still needs that. And I found that very interesting in terms of like recovery and also not getting sick.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Again, a fast athlete is one who can train consistently and not get sick. And that is, again, so high on the totem pole of success that, again, is now probably being pushed down by a lot of folks. And I can probably tell you, most of us do not fuel enough. We had some athletes working with a nutritionist who actually had them just track their calories. And I would say 95% of our athletes were under fueling. And when we were tracking how much we were eating and then how much we were burning. So they obviously understand their burn rate and they try to push that to the highest limit of this is how much I'm burning, this is how much I need to replace in order to keep training. And everyone was under fueling by a massive amount. And I almost had to force food down when I was training at my highest levels. So Todd, I feel like you want to weigh in. Todd Giannelli, you listen to it. You have some takeaways. Go. Ashley, you're next.
There were a lot, but one non-controversial was, I think, they talked about how they debate with their coaches. They never win the debates, but it sounds like they debate a lot. And I sent you an email. I have a check mark on that. I already have that one. So I never win a debate with you. The other one, and I mean, I don't mean this to be mean or controversial, but I think they get close to the line of cheating. I think that, they don't break the letter of the law, but the spirit of the sport is it's individual when we race. And the fact that one was waiting for the other on the bike and they were clearly racing together. We all saw them. That's not really how it's supposed to be done. And I think at the end, what Christian said is it hurt him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they race against each other, because he clearly said that, Gustav was 280 watts for seven minutes going up to the turnaround at Hobby, which is an uphill into the wind ride. And he essentially said that blew him up a bit on the bike.
Interesting. Good takeaways. Ashley, I know you commented on some takeaways. Do you want to weigh in for us?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely, I think the biggest thing for me is just, I'm 38 and I just started this sport like a year ago. So I think the biggest thing is like, at their level, they've been training for 16 years. And like you messaged me, it's like, they have been doing this, they don't go to work every day. They don't have they don't have other things. They don't even have girlfriends or anything. And so, that has to go into perspective, because we're all type A people and want to do everything perfectly, but still, we really have to put that into perspective and not be so hard on ourselves I was looking at glucose monitors today and I'm like, oh my God, I told Rance, I was like, oh my God, these are so expensive. So, and then the recovery thing too. I go get a massage. I do all the extra things and they're like, no, fuel and sleep. And I'm like, man, that makes sense.
Yeah. Very good. So at the end of the day, I would say this struck out the most, because so many people are going to look for, after that, they're going to go buy a core body temp. After that, they want to do lactate testing. After that, they're going to buy glucose monitors for how much, which is just basically a feedback tool. You can have common sense and kind of do the same thing. And they're missing the fact that for 16 years, I thought it was interesting. It was Gustav. He said, we have been training better than most pros today on the circuit for now 16 years. That is at the essence essentially of their results today. And on top of that, you spelled it out in a bubble. When you guys know, when you have no distractions and everything, they have the support of the coaches, they have support of teammates, they're showing up together to push each other. That is a huge thing. You do that for 16 years, of course you're going to be the best in the world, right? And you know how much to eat and sleep. Good takeaway. I think that was, I feel like everyone took away from that, but again, they're going to put ahead maybe what is the quick fixes, right? And then fortunately, there's no quick fixes to that level of performance. It's just week in, week out work. Did anyone else who listened want to weigh in quickly? And then I'll just go through for 10 minutes, like some of from the top, what I picked out. Anyone? Conrad, are you wanting to weigh in? No, I can't hear you. Okay. I can't hear you, so don't worry. If you figure out the microphone, then we'd love to hear what you have to say. Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay. So these are the things. I actually just listed it as I was listening to it. No. Hold on. Let me tell him no. I'll do that. From the top, so not in order of importance, I'll list out importance as I go. Every day they show up to bring out the best of each other. Okay, so they are helping each other through these workouts and they are pushing each other. That was key. I think if you have someone else to train with you obviously, if you have the ability to have a squad, amazing. If you have the ability to just have one other person to be there to keep you accountable, keep energy high, you need to be responsible for that as well as your teammate, and you will get the best out of each other and elevate your training experience. This one is more for like a Simon or for a, I see Simon in the back there, someone who's looking to win, okay, which there are actually a bunch of you on here. I could probably go on forever. I just saw Simon in the back. You have to know your competition. They knew exactly what everyone else's strengths were, where they needed to be. And they had to then calculate risks out there and understand the costs of those risks. And that's something we've been talking about. And so something that probably led to Simon's success on this last race is he knew what he needed to do on the swim, kind of where he wanted to be on the bike. But yeah, through my career, I always told Steve, I'm going to place 6th or I'm going to place 7th, because I knew exactly how the race was going to unfold based on everything I knew about my opponents, my other people I raced with. Sorry, that sounded terrible. And I knew kind of how things were going to shake up and what their history and their results is. And so I think that is like vitally important. The better you get, that you know your competition and then have a plan in place and do the training in place to adjust to what could happen out there. Again, that's just for the very top. If you want to be good at the sport, you now have to be good in all 3. You know, they talked about how the sport has improved, and it used to be the case where someone was really good in 2 of the 3 sports and they could still win. Now you have to be good in all 3 sports. And so, you know, in the off season, very important time to make gains. It's actually the biggest opportunity for improvement for 2023. If you get a start late on that, you're not going to set yourself up for your best racing. And so meeting with your coach and saying, you know, not let's set these arbitrary goals. It's like, what are my limitations from competing is the question you should be asking. And then you start attacking those limitations to be the best. Okay. Everyone's saying, you know, the sport is being elevated. Everyone's getting faster. Well, something they really touched on was the fueling element. You know, there's a lot of science that has been disclosed recently in how many carbohydrates we could take, how much sodium we're now taking, how much we can drink. And they talked about how they're pushing the upper limit. And I would argue to say the reason we're having these performances is because of fueling. In an Ironman, they were running out of fuel, and it was just basically the last man standing. And they even talked to it. But, you know, we're keen to look at, again, lactate testing and this and that, and not just the simple art of execution of race day and fueling being such a key component. And that's why we have to practice our fueling in training to maximize what our body can take in. You have to train the gut, and then on race day, we are then prepared. You can't not train it in training and then try to push 100 grams of carbs. It's all going to come up. And then you have to know the dosage you're taking at a time. We see many people having stomach discomfort or throwing up because they're taking a whole bunch at once. They're having, okay, now you got it working, Conrad. And then they have the osmolarity wrong. We see that a lot where they're taking a whole bunch of carbs and not enough water. And now all of a sudden, that's what's giving them the discomfort. So you have to have a really good understanding of how to kind of take in all these 3 products. We're not going to get them through. I really want to stick to the 623, and we'll keep going next time. Christian said something interesting that stood out to me, and I think all of you need to know this. He said he didn't know why he could keep up with Gustav in the run of the race, and why Gustav took the fact that he didn't know, with all their knowledge and all their science. And he said it could have been this, it could have been that. You know, most of us, when we don't run well in a race, we say we're bad runners. And so we're going to toss away our swim and bike, and we're just going to go into run season and attack that. When honestly, 90% of the time, it's not our run that's bad. It's everything we did into that run. And he picked on it the first hit. He said, was it the surges I was doing on the bike? I'm like, probably that. Was it the nutrition? Probably that. So I would say, because the 3 sports play into each other, if you want to be a good runner, we got to figure out also the swim and bike component as part of that equation, not just I want to be a good runner. Okay, yes, I do think running races in the off season, if you are not someone who's good at execution and needs confidence in executing and getting their speed up on the run, yes, doing shorter run races is key. It teaches you how to execute, and it translates well. But again, not at the cost of something that pre-leads to the run. Okay. Does anyone want to add into anything I've said up to this point to give me a break? Conrad, now that you've got it working, go.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, especially after I saw the Waco temperatures on Saturday, and then also you always hear when people do, when they do Kona, talk about the heat. And I thought what they were saying is, I don't know whether it was they or the interviewer, I forgot his name, Rudy or whatever, whether when your body temperature is on the rise, that's when you probably feel the most discomfort. Eventually you get to a level where it sort of plateaus, and you can potentially at that level start to get used to the heat. And to me, that was a big takeaway. I found it many times when I run here that the first 2 or 3 miles are all full, and then once you sort of start to sweat more, or if you drink more in a race, if you take the ice, then you actually see that your body start to adjust and you start to run better. So I thought that was an interesting little dynamic in terms of the rise in temperature, and then at what point can you start to manage, get used to that, and then work through in your race, just run through that sort of that higher body temperature without, I think after that, if it sort of keeps on climbing and you see that your heart rate goes crazy, then probably you have to pull back. But I thought that was an interesting dynamic. We've said it. The other thing that I thought was interesting is just at the end of the day, it comes, I mean, sure, they have all the science in the world and so on, but they sleep well, they eat well, and they train well, and they don't get injured. And I thought that, to me, the simplicity of that, I thought was, okay, that sort of gets you to 8 out of 10 in terms of trying to find the secret in the sport.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it any better. So perfect. Thank you for weighing in on that. Such good stuff. I'm going to close on this. I have so many more, but this one is a key one because we're getting to our final races of the season. And something that Christian said, he talked about how painful that Ironman was for him. Like, he was really struggling right now. And so just to hear a world champion, he came third. He's the best in the world, and he's emotionally struggling right now. And I know it, I've seen it. However, he's now looking towards 70.3 worlds right now. And that's kind of taking the focus off that, allowing him to kind of check in and move past it and move in. And so I think something for us at the end of the season, and something we probably need to do a whole 30 minutes on, is like the Ironman blues, like the post race. We've built up so high, do the race, and sometimes we have a great race and we still have the Ironman blues. Sometimes we have a terrible race and then it's even worse. And like, how do we come off that? And I'll just say, number one, it's common. And so don't beat yourself up if you are feeling that way. But then, of course, you need an action plan to come out of it. And I think it's, for me, it was always like, what else can I focus on next? And it doesn't have to be a race, but I think we're in such a process of improving ourselves and growth through the process of preparing for an Ironman. And as soon as like there's no growth, like I'm sleeping in, not really taking care of myself, and we don't feel good, that's when kind of things fall apart. And so I always look to where can I put my attention to next. And I will say the best years that I've had, the best recoveries are when I always had something, another race or something kind of in the back that I had to look forward to. And I immediately got on the active recovery after an Ironman. Instead of just like completely taking time off, I said, I'm going to be intentional about this time off versus do nothing. And this way I'm pushing myself forwards versus not contributing to my growth. And so I'm going to be ready when I am ready to train in 2 weeks time. My body's in a really good place. Most people shut things down to a point when they're ready to train. Their body is not ready to train. They may be ready to train, but they've shut things down to now their body's not working as it should. And so I really focus on mobility and strength so that when I start to add back training in, my hips aren't tight, my back's not tight. I can't tell you how many seasons that was the issue. So wanted to end on that. If we have any other questions on this, but hopefully that was helpful, you guys. I did one more is the egg philosophy. Have you guys heard that before? Did you guys hear it? Where basically a whole bunch of guys started in the program, and it kind of shows you again the level of the program and the smarts of the program, in that they just trained them high volume, high intensity, and whoever withstood the training, now now they are where they are. And that's not the first time I've heard that. Brett Sutton, multiple world championships, Daniela Rafe, Chrissy Wellington. That's his method too. You show up to a training camp and he's going to just try to break you. And and this was just so you know, they understand like what the pros are doing. And if they withstand that, then they know that this person is kind of capable of doing something in the sports. So, okay, guys, you guys have a good evening. We have 70.3 World, so good luck to everyone doing that. We've got still Arizona, Florida, a couple other races, but we will keep these going. Even if I can't be it on next week, we will have someone run it. Okay, have a good week. Bye.